That you're gonna hear my bird a lot. She likes to be a part of everything.
That's right. This is the very first like really really warm weather podcast that I've done over Zoom, and my air conditioner is right over my microphone. So hopefully your bird will counteract the wind that comes in from my AC onto my mic.
Well, I don't hear it, but I wish there was AC on me right now because I feel like I'm so hot. Like 80 degrees in this room. It's only 72, but it feels 80.
That's funny. Well, let's jump right into it. Speaking of so hot, I'll tell you, uh, you are for the only thing that I know about you, LeeAnn, besides like modern day and like and when you're selling products and making stuff, is that in 11th grade. For about a second half of the semester is like the only time I ever had like seen you, met you, don't know where it was, but I remember like asking, who is that blonde girl? She's so hot. So for like one semester before you graduated, because you're 2000, right? So for that one semester, you were like the hottest girl in my life, in my world, and I was just like, who is she? And then you left, and that's my story. So thanks for coming.
Well, you should know that in 12th grade, I was dating someone, so I wasn't available.
I never dated anyone, so I wasn't available anyway.
No, no,
Never dated.
it's probably better that way. Trust me.
Um, so thanks for coming though. Because I'm trying to like talk to other classmates, people who are doing other stuff, to kind of find out their path. And you're so active on social media with your products and making stuff, and I'm just kind of curious always, how do people's lives go the way that they go, and your path through Wissahickon and everything. So, yeah, I guess that would be the first question: is like, when did you actually come into Wissahickon?
Well, I technically came to Wissahickon twice. I was in kindergarten at Madison Avenue, and then my mom moved. My parents divorced pre-school, and so she moved to Pittsburgh, and so I went with her, and so I lived there for about
Wow.
10 years. And then we moved back, and I was in eighth grade when I moved back the second time, and so I really didn't know anybody at all because when you're in kindergarten, how many friends do you keep when you move 8 hours away?
Yeah.
So I just started making friends in eighth grade, and then I finished high school with basically all those same friends.
So tell me a little bit about like Pittsburgh and growing up there from like eighth grade. I did you have like a good group of friends there? Was there, middle school? What was your vibe there? Was it clicky? How did you get along out there?
Well, so from first grade to seventh grade, I was there. I did cheerleading the whole time, which I continued to do when I came back here. Um, I feel like I had a good group of friends. There wasn't a lot of neighborhoods where we lived, so everyone kind of lived far out. So you spent your weekend at your friend's house because there wasn't just everyone got together.
Oh.
Um, when people make those jokes where they had to walk a mile to school, like I would have had to walk a mile to my bus stop if my mom didn't drive me, which she did. But um, it was just kind of country where we lived. Everyone was really nice that I can remember.
So what kind of activities then? If it's, around here, a lot of people will talk about, having friends from their neighborhood and then you can ride bikes and in your streets. What was your daily activities for like fun outside of school?
Well, outside of school and cheerleading, my friends and I would do like dumb kid stuff where like today you're like, what are you doing? So my mom would take me to Office Max and I would buy like office supplies and I would play like, and I always wanted my name to be Beverly.
Why Beverly?
I don't know. So dumb. But and then some of my other friends and I would play waitress. And like when you think of that today, like I was a waitress for 6 years. Like I would not want to play that game again. That's just stupid. I should have played like, I don't know, a billionaire when I was little.
Good
But
practice, yeah. I love no, I used to love like office supply. I used to go to my mom's office all the time, like when we'd have early dismissals or late arrivals or some days off. I'd go there. I loved like I don't know, I like staplers and the mechanical pencils. And I was one of those kids that whenever I get a new notebook or a new pen or something, I would always like have something to write about then. And it would only last for like a week. But having the new utensils would always like inspire me to do something.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what it was about Office. Maybe it's like organized, so it felt fun. I don't know. I'm not super organized now. I try to be. My husband would probably disagree with me.
At least you're fooling us with that wall behind you.
Oh,
It looks very
no, I like to
organized.
alphabetize. It's all alphabetized so I can find it. There is a lot, so if I don't keep it that way, I won't find what I need. And I have like 10 oil shelves in my house.
Nice.
There's a lot.
You mentioned that it was your parents' divorce then that brought you to Pittsburgh. What brought you back for eighth grade to Wissahickon?
Well, so actually, when my parents divorced, my mom remarried, and his job brought us to Pittsburgh. He
Okay.
worked on the barges on the river in Monongahela, and then he passed away. So there was really nothing keeping us there because we didn't really have family. So we
Mm.
moved back here. My dad has always lived in Bluebell. My brothers want they have gone to Wissahickon their whole life, so we just moved back to the area, and then I was able to go to Wissahickon with them.
Oh wow, that's I mean that's such a sad unexpected reason to have to come back. What is the what's that like that transition? That's such a your mom loses you lose a stepdad and now you're moving back in, you know, what is that like as a 14, 13-year-old kid?
Well, I think that I've always been pretty easygoing. So it wasn't like, whoa, I'm being ripped away from my friends. I guess I kind of always thought that I'd keep in touch with them. And I did. I did reach out when Facebook became a thing. I did reach out to some of them and was able to get in contact with them. And in 2006, I was in the Miss Pennsylvania pageant. And so that was back in Pittsburgh. And so I was able to get in contact with more of those friends at that time. I didn't get to see any of them because it was like super busy week,
Mm.
but I did reconnect with a lot of people saying like, "Hey, I'm coming back. If you're a local, I'd love to see you." And then a lot of them had moved away, so they weren't really local anyway.
Yeah, one of the things that I was always exploring when thinking about doing this podcast and is like what happens to those friends that you have from when you're like in kindergarten, first grade, right? Everyone's best friends through elementary school, it seems, and then at some point that kind of like sheds away more and more as it gets more into, you know, your interests, sports, whatever that you start grouping off your friends by. But yours is kind of by force.
Yeah.
When you go to Wissahickon now, that's a hard time. Most people had been together, you know, from sixth grade, and we've got these pods on top of that. What's your introduction to Wissahickon like when you're walking in? How are you? How does that go for you?
Well, actually, the first day was probably pretty scary because it was a new school and they were all brand new people. I was the first person I was welcomed by. Her name was Melissa Baker. We're no longer in touch. She has a twin brother, Joel.
Yeah.
She welcomed me and introduced me to her friends, and then I kind of met friends. I don't even remember if we were in the same pod at really at all, but then I met other people in my pods who I am still very good friends with today. Another one of those people is Andrea Kirsch. And we had I think, a great connection right off the bat. And we had stayed friends all through high school, through college. And like I said, we're still friends today. I did have a best friend, like basically since birth. Our parents were best friends in high school. And so we have remained friends for, we say 40 years because our parents were probably pregnant when they were friends with us. So
From Wissahickon or another area?
she was in the Willow Grove Roslyn area, but she came to Wissahickon in ninth grade, I think. I don't think it was eighth grade.
Who was
It
it?
might have been eighth grade. Stephanie Dimmick. Well, Stephanie Mullen.
Okay. I know the Mullen name, but I don't know Stefan.
Well,
She have
there's some
brothers?
older Mullins
Yeah.
too. That she's like her brother. Well, her younger brothers went there, but her mid brothers did not.
Okay.
Um, but there was Chris Mullen, and he was, I think, a couple years older than me, and I think he was big into sports.
It's really possible I'm thinking of Chris Mullen from the Golden State Warriors.
Oh, and then also not that same Chris Mullen.
You're like, you go Chris Mullen. I'm like, yeah, that's him. And I'm like, no, that is from the Dream Team.
But
Um,
she did cheerleading with me as well, so you might have known her because of that. I don't know
what's it?
how.
What was it cheerleading? I haven't really talked to anyone that's done cheerleading. I think Jenny Martin did some cheerleading, but what was your cheerleading experience like coming in? Especially, I mean, coming in eighth grade and then you switched in ninth grade. What's it like coming in new, trying to establish yourself?
Well, I think that with Wissahickon, they didn't have a lot of criteria to be a cheerleader. Like now, you have to do backflips and handsprings, and you have to be able to do all these things, and we didn't have to. And even though I did gymnastics most of my life, I couldn't do those. So I feel like they were kind of open with that
Mm,
kind of stuff. So I tried out for eighth grade and I made it. There's a pretty big squad. And then in ninth grade, I don't, I feel like we switched coaches like every year too. So it was kind of a fresh start each year.
mm.
But I did it ninth and 10th for junior varsity, and I did captain for 10th grade. And then I did 11th and 12th for varsity, and I did captain for my senior year. My experience with the program, it was so fun. Um, all the coaches were always fun. I mean, one of our coaches was an aerobic teacher, so jazzercise was a thing for us. She was always keeping us in shape. We had to run a mile every day.
Wow, every day.
Yeah, we would start off running the track at the football stadium, and then when we did basketball cheer, we'd run the track on the inside.
What is being the captain of the cheerleading team entail?
It just means that all the girls vote for you to be the leader, and by the leader, you pick formations. You sometimes you have to come up with the dance routine that you guys will do. There's usually a captain and a co-captain, so you're doing it with a partner. I feel like I probably always asked other people's input because I never really felt like, well, what I say is gonna go. It was like, what do y'all think?
Mm.
And I think that just kind of works in real life in general.
I've watched that cheerleading show Cheer. Is that what I think that's what it's called? That show on Netflix.
I
Uh,
have not watched it, but I have heard a lot of things about it. And they're coming to Hershey, and we thought about going to see it this summer.
it's pretty
That I think
intense.
it's another level of cheer.
And I remember, I guess, Bring It On was kind of like more of our era of cheerleading, and I remember just being shocked at like the fact that our school didn't do cheers like that. Our cheers, I
So
felt, were very like I felt like our school was very like ready, okay, and then like do kind of like TV sitcom cheers. Like that's what was reminiscent of what I'd
yeah.
see on like Family Matters or something, not necessarily like the giant formations. Was that a did you, and I didn't know anything about that until I see those movies, right? Did you know about these wild formations? Was that something that you wanted to do? Was it known, hey, we don't do these things?
Well, I think some of that's up to the coach too of how they instruct. Like currently, my daughter is in cheer and she's been doing it since kindergarten. And our coaches for specifically competition cheer are very in tuned with like what you need to win. And we mostly got first place, and so they're like totally into it. And I feel like maybe our coaches in high school might have just been there for the fun. We didn't do a whole lot of competitions, and the ones I remember, we absolutely did not win. So, but
Did
it was
you?
still fun.
Yeah, were you? I mean, and the other thing is that there's no guys in on the cheerleading team. I don't think maybe one or two. Maybe by the end, some started popping in, but I feel like it was pretty much an all girls for at least. I know you need bases and stuff to lift these
Right.
girls and throw and.
So my senior year, I was also on a state cheerleading team, and we had two boys from high school. Um, and I do not remember their last names because I am terrible with this, but it was Mike and Sal, and they were both in our grade, and they were on the competition with
Sal
us, and they
Tacridi?
did great. Maybe. Did you graduate with me?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I feel like there's only one Sal.
yeah. Police officer.
Yes.
Yeah,
Now, yes.
yeah. Shout out to Sal. I saw him at the Ambler Car Show the other day. Actually, I didn't say hi, but I was like, I think that's Sal, and then I'm like, Tacridi. Yes, I remember him. So it's funny you're mentioning him now.
Nice. Him and Mike were the nicest guys, but our coach would not allow boy cheerleaders. And I said, but like they do the job of three of our girls, so it makes sense to like free up some people, and they weren't, our coach was not into it. And I'm sure if we fought hard enough for it, they wouldn't have said no, but I don't think anyone was trying to make waves
Yeah.
then 20 years ago. Like,
Uh, was cheerleading like a what was the vibe for cheerleading around the rest of the school for you? I kind of always looked at, like, you know, you always hear about the cheerleader and the football team, right? It's kind of like the always kind of seemed like the king and queens of popularity in school. Did you find that being the captain of the cheerleading team that came with some notoriety around school?
I didn't feel it. My best friend Stephanie will. She says that I was the most popular person in high school, and I absolutely know that I was not. So I love that she feels that for me. But I was like, no, and I'm pretty sure it was like exciting for me to be in cheerleading, but I don't think other people who weren't cheerleaders were like, whoa, look at those girls. They were just like,
Yeah.
okay. Just like I looked at people who did lacrosse. Oh, they do lacrosse. Oh, they do soccer. I do cheer. Like there was no like levels for me. Maybe if we were like winning football games like crazy and we were just like the top, maybe I would have felt like yes. But I did not. I didn't feel that way.
I was gonna say, you know, if our teams got more attention, and the football games I thought were like pretty big. I didn't go to many because I worked at Wawa. That's what I just would do on Friday nights. But like I felt like a lot of people would go to the football games on Friday nights, win or lose. That was always the place to go. But then as the year went on, basketball and other things, the attendance would kind of dwindle.
I always felt like the stands were pretty full for our games. I mean, football ends and then basketball starts, so then we transition over to that. It seemed to me that football was always the moneymaker for schools versus basketball. I mean, I don't remember basketball ever being like slammed with visitors. Like there
Right.
was some people came, but like you could easily be like, oh, there's 25 people here.
Near the end,
Because
they once with Coach Wilson, I think they started really like making some playoff runs, and the program started to build in the basketball team, and so like playoff games would start. But like, you know, Tuesday night games, no one was going to those in the gym.
yeah, I mean, I loved basketball season. I always thought our team was great. I just felt like people always get more excited for that Friday night football. There's just the stigma with it. They're like, yeah, and even today, and we don't even like my kid goes to football on Saturdays. Like,
Right.
there's no Friday night football for us. We're not in high school.
Did you did you fit in, I guess, like with for me, I felt like once middle school started, that's where you really started seeing a difference in maturity. And I was on the low scale, right? So didn't date, didn't go to parties, didn't do anything other than hang out with like a very, very small group of friends. But then I would look out, or you would hear in the hallways, you know, when Mondays or whatever, when everyone comes back, about these parties and how everyone was dating and drinking and all these things, that I was just like, it was like a whole nother world. Again, my maturity level was at the low end, I think, for things like that. So I don't think even if I was exposed, I could handle it.
Oh.
For you being a grade ahead and just coming in eighth grade, what was your experience as you're seeing like people who are peers and their social life compared to yours?
Well, I feel like there's definitely groups of people who hung out all the time. I don't necessarily think like there was jock groups and smart groups and nerdy groups necessarily. I feel like I didn't really belong to a group. I kind of felt like I had friends kind of everywhere.
Mm.
Um, and I still joke about that today that I feel like none of my friends are really friends with each other, but I just
Yeah.
like have all these separate friends. But if we were all together, everyone would get along, but then they never really hang out outside of us. I don't
Yeah.
know. But I did go to parties. I did not drink or smoke because that was a rule for cheerleading. If you got caught doing that, you couldn't do it. So cheerleading was always more important to me,
Mm.
which sounds funny, but at least it was like, kept me out of
Yeah.
trouble, I guess.
Yeah, when you're young, whatever keeps you on the straight and narrow in that respect is good for you.
I will say though, when I finished cheerleading, like all bets were off. So I was like, what are we doing this weekend? Oh, okay. And my mom, which probably is not how I'm going to act when my child's 18, but she was okay, you can have drinks if you're at home and nobody's driving. And while I thought well, you're the coolest mom ever. She just meant like, well, I don't want you getting in trouble
Right.
and I can watch you. And my mom didn't drink growing up. So she was like, I am always going to be fully watching you. And I don't know.
Did that
Because of
kill?
that, I just,
Did that kill the vibe of like drinking as like the fun, or did it become like, oh, we can hang out here, and then just you and your friends were able to comfortably hang out and have drinks if you want to at your house?
I think I only had one friend who came over and drank, and she would sleep over. Um, I feel like it might have killed the vibe because when I was then 19, I always had older friends. And so on Tuesdays, we would go to Pitcher's Pub in Manayunk, and the door guy would just let me in. I did
Mm.
not have a fake ID. And then on Thursdays, we would go to Old City, and I don't even remember the name of the place, but it was like a dive bar. And just by the time I turned 21, it was like, oh, that's not really fun to go out. Like I went out when other people were going out, but I wasn't like, let's go drinking. Like
Mm.
it was kind of
That's what some people have mentioned as far as, depending on their experience, that by the time they got to like a college level and people were breaking out for the first time, some of them were like, and granted, when they speak about it, it's heavier drugs and things like that, but like, their experience just having that freedom when they were younger was kind of like, oh, I'm not, I don't really need to do this for the experience. I've done that already.
yeah. It's probably like in some crazy way, and I don't believe I'm about to say this, but had I not started at the younger age, I might have gone harder, and then like it could have been a lot worse when you're not like, ooh, I better tame it down because I'm not supposed to be doing this, and then
Mm.
also, I went to Temple, so I didn't stay there. I had an apartment with my now husband.
Mm.
Um, so that's another thing. I feel like had I did the campus life, I probably might have been a little different. But
Yeah, I didn't. For my senior year, I went to Temple as well, and for my senior year, I lived in Port Richmond, which is the only time like I lived in the city. The rest of the time, I commuted to main campus, and I had a friend. One of my best friends lived like right off the campus at 10th and Montgomery at UV, University Village, and that was like a game changer for college for me. It was like because then you could go party as soon as classes were over. It's like
uh,
class is over and it's like, let's go walk to my buddy's dorm right off campus here. And it's like, hey, yeah, of course. And then you go there at like 4 o'clock and you stay all night. So it made it and everyone's just kind of around. There's a campus bar, right? And so you're just kind of like hopping around to whatever. People are having parties in their dorms, and versus I think if I was home, or if I was living or not just living off campus and not having a place on campus, I think it would have been a lot more like, we're just watching TV or we're going to go out to the game or whatever.
yeah, I mean, it's when you're so accessible to it. It's all right there, and you're like, okay.
Candyland. What for you then going into like 8th grade, 9th grade, what were you into once you're past the stage of playing office? What were like your activities outside
Oh,
of cheerleading?
um, you know, I feel like I just like to be outside a lot. Um, I did. I mean, outside cheerleading and gymnastics, I feel like cheerleading kind of consumed me. Like my mom, when we got an apartment in Bluebell, like we rented a second floor of someone else's home, was one of my brother's good friends. We got a trampoline and they had a pool, so like you would spend time either practicing on the trampoline for cheerleading or you'd swim in the pool. Um, I feel like a lot of sleepovers, and someone who I was very good friends with in high school was Jenny Serpak, and she didn't live that far away, and we spent a lot of time together. Um, yeah, just I think just like hanging out, listening to music.
What was the sleepover movie?
Oh, okay. So I don't know that we necessarily had a sleepover movie, but my favorite movie, I feel like it didn't come out till 2000, was Scream. And I know that Jenny and I watched that movie like 1 million times,
Yeah.
and we each had a crush on one of the killers.
Skeet
And
was it Skeet Ulrich?
that was mine. She liked Matt Lillard. I think that's his
Yeah.
last name.
Is it Lillard or I've been calling him Lillard my whole life.
It probably is. I don't know. But yeah, we were obsessed with that movie, and that's. I mean, I love scary movies, but that to me is not really a scary movie. It's more. I guess I think it's funny.
It is
I don't know.
funny. They were like, it was one of the first ones that where they looked like us. They looked like teenagers. They hadn't been in 15 other movies where it's like, oh, well, they're actually like 29, and like they all look like
Right.
kids. They were. It was a throwback to those movies in the 70s where like they're having a house party. You know, school's canceled. What are you going to do? Well, we're having a house party. Those are the type of things that, like, in my mind, I wanted to have my mind, my world open to. They were doing actual things that I think high school kids would do.
My mom was actually scared to let me watch that movie because my brother, who's almost 10 years older than me, his girlfriend at the time was like, "You can't let her watch that. That could really happen in real life." And I was like, anybody can die in real life. Like,
Final
it's,
Destination had us all shook.
yeah, it certainly did. But I watched the last Scream that they just made, and I wasn't surprised. I felt like I could call all the shots the entire time of the whole movie. I won't give any spoilers in case anyone hasn't
I
seen it
haven't
yet.
seen it yet.
Okay. It just was, I feel like, a cheesier version of the original Scream. And while I have seen all of them, the original to me is like just so iconic. It
Which
was
is
just enough
funny.
for everyone to top it.
Well, it's funny though because I think the original, if we were older, we would probably say the original is a cheesy ripoff of what we had watched in like the 70s or the 80s, right? They recreate a lot of stuff, but to us it was pretty brand new.
Right. Yeah. No, I totally see that.
But I agree, Scream was a great movie. I also watched it a million times, and it was ruined for me. Someone in class like was talking about it, and they're like, "There's two killers," and I was like, "No!" And to this day, I will anytime I put it on, I try to imagine I don't know the hook, that I don't know that there's a twist, and I always try and go, "Oh, that's so exciting!" That's because the original like thrill was, I thought that was so unique, and it was spoiled for me.
Yeah. No, I actually, every time I watch it, I try to figure out which one of them is doing which kill at the time.
Yes.
And I hope that it figured out, but sometimes I'm like, I don't know.
That's good. Right, right. Because they split up so many times. There's the guy that's in the house, but then there's also the one that's in the school, in the bathroom stall, and yeah, yeah. And they set it up where then Billy will just pop up out of nowhere after she's running, and
And they're not even the same size. So you're like,
right.
kind of like, how?
Yeah, one guy's a little short, little broader. The other guy's like pole thin.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's funny.
I feel like it was probably never Matt and it was always Skeet Ulrich, like doing those parts, but
Because that's
we
your
just
favorite.
didn't figure it out.
I bet it's Skeet.
Maybe.
Um, did you work in high school?
I did. My summer of ninth grade, I worked at a country club as a cleaning lady. I got to clean out the men's area, which is an area where women are not allowed.
Get
It
out,
was
yeah.
terrible. There would be
Oh.
cigars and peanut shells everywhere. Oh, it was terrible. The thing would be like you would spend 5 hours cleaning that one room. So
And
I
as
never
far,
went back.
and as far as country club jobs go, you like that's the one where you get zero tips, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
what
I
a
was
bummer.
also 14 turning 15, so I don't think there was a lot of
You had working
things.
papers.
Yeah.
It beats
After
bagging
that,
at the supermarket, maybe.
yeah, that's a job I've never done. After that, I worked at a retirement home as a waitress, which you also don't get tips doing.
Mm-hmm.
And then in high school, I think my last high school job was I worked at Coneheads in Ambler.
Yeah, that was
So
where
I did that.
I had my 5th birthday party there.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Nice.
we had a magician in there and everything. Yeah, Coneheads was the spot. Like
So,
always, the last. Oh, you didn't like it?
no, I did. I did. I
The
had ice cream like every single day.
yeah,
Every day I had ice cream.
the last day of baseball, the teams would always go to Coneheads for Ambler
Oh,
baseball. That would always be the spot, and you get like your big dish of ice cream as a congratulations trophy for not
yeah.
making it into the playoffs.
Ice cream's always better than the participation trophies anyway.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
No, working there, I probably worked there for a year or two. I of course was blonde then. I've always been a brunette, but I dyed my hair starting probably 8th grade. I was red or pink at some point and then transitioned to blonde. Um, I was just always so fair skinned that when I had dark hair, people used to just tell my mom how sick I looked. And she'd always be like, "She's so sick looking." And my mom was like, "What?"
Get
So
out.
I didn't look that way when I had blonde hair.
So did you
I was
make?
also,
No, go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was obsessed with tanning. So as I still am, I don't tan outside because my skin just burns and then I go right back to being a ghost. So I've always been a self tanner and I felt like the blonde hair also kind of helped with that, made it look a little bit more realistic. I don't know
That's
how much it really did, but
You know what's funny is I never like even I mean I guess I obviously knew that women dye their hair, but I don't think I ever like knew much about it until you posted something about that
oh,
a couple years ago and you called yourself a boxed blonde. And I think I'd probably heard that term before and I never knew what it meant until like literally like a year ago when you posted this. And so I
yeah.
was curious when like what prompted that because you do it I mean so you do it because of your fair skin, but you do it right as you're going to Wissahickon?
Yeah, so my mom, when we lived in Pittsburgh, went to school to be a cosmetologist. So she used to practice on me, and probably in 4th grade, I got a perm, which did not look good.
It never does
Um,
when you're in the fourth grade.
no, and then 5th grade, and then I think even 6th grade and 7th grade is when I started to. I feel like my 7th grade picture, my hair is like straight to here, and then it's permed because I was like growing, definitely growing that out. But when I got to 8th grade, I had my hair was like this short,
Mm.
which it will never be that short again because it grows this much a year. Um, and I feel like probably a lot of kids were dyeing their hair with Kool-Aid, the whole Kool-Aid trend. And so
Mm.
I was like, but my hair was dark. So if I wanted it, I'd have to go lighter to make it do the red or the pinks.
Right.
And I did that and I did not like it.
Really?
I feel like there's still people to this day would be like, I remember you when you had red hair. I'm like, for like 2 months, I will never let it down. And then I went blonde.
And then you stayed blonde the entire time.
I did. I was blonde for 23 years. That
Was
when
there?
I started growing this back out, just because my hair just was, it was crap. Like it would break, it would grow to here and break off. And I was like, ooh. So when I started doing that, and then I hadn't seen people in a while, they would say to me, "Oh my God, you dyed your hair brown." And I'm like, "Nope, that's just the color." And so then I started posting pictures of me when I was little so you could see, like,
Mm.
yep, she really is brunette.
Was there any? I mean, it's the image. Like in my head, it's the high school image, the cheerleader, the blonde, right? All that. Was any of that in your head at the time of like wanting to like have this image of like being like the blonde? Blondes have more fun. Any of that bullshit that kind of went
Oh,
around when we were kids. I mean, when you look in magazines, right? It was always like the blonde on the TV show and all that stuff. Was any part of that for you? Like, where you embraced that aspect of changing?
no, I don't think so. I got more of the dumb blonde than I did the blondes have more fun. Um, I think also when you're in high school, you just kind of do dumb things. Like you're not necessarily an idiot, but you're like, oh my
I'll try
goodness,
it.
I didn't realize. And then people are always like, you're such a blonde, and I'd be like, but I'm not really. But it's just like I feel like me being blonde is like my name being LeeAnn. It's not LeeAnn, but
What?
nobody knows that
Wait, not
because
blonde. Your name's not LeeAnn. What are we?
because my formal name is Marilee,
Get out.
but my middle name's Ann, and my mom was also Marilee Ann. So for my nickname, they it's just right there, Marilee Ann. So they just took the end of my first name and my middle name and made a nickname.
Wow. Did anyone ever know that? First day of school every year. Did you have that awkward? Oh yeah.
Hmm. They would
So
say Marilee, and I'm like here, and then some people would look at me, and then they would forget because then for the rest of the year the teacher would call me LeeAnn, and so it was never a thing. And then going into work, oh, I'd sign papers, and my name would be Marilee, but my name tag would always say LeeAnn, and so when people find out my name's Marilee, they're always like, "What?"
so my first name legally is the letter A. Right? My mom named
Oh,
me A. Bradford Corbett. right? There's a whole familial connection with all that, but everyone my whole life has called me Brad. That's always been my middle name. So I was even embarrassed just by like Bradford. Bradford was embarrassing for me to be called, but let alone first day of school, everyone, like every teacher, every single class, A, Brad, and I would just pray that they would not see it and they would just go like, just go with the Bradford and I'll correct you from like, because they would always go A, and I would like say nothing and they'd be looking around, A, is there an A Corbett? And everyone looks like, isn't that you? And I'm like, I'm A, just call me Brad. It was so embarrassing for me. It like red face, all that, red hair, red face.
Well, so then I feel like my probably 11th grade, I had a couple closer friends who started calling me LA or like LeeAnn for short. I didn't like any nicknames. I didn't like one person has ever got away with calling me Lily, which is my best friend's mom.
I was just gonna say, would you get Lily?
Absolutely not. Um, so no one can ever spell LeeAnn correctly, which drives me crazy. It's so simple. It's just Leann, but people screw it up. And it's one of my biggest pet peeves. Um, but so anyway, they just started as a nickname calling me LA, and I love that. I was like, okay, LA, great. You can't mess that up. It's just two letters.
Mm-hmm.
So now I always say my name LA, and people will call and be like, "Is La available?" I'm like, I feel so defeated.
Can't win.
Like I can't make it any more simple than that. And yeah, so
As a grown up, I feel better about it now. It takes a lot to embarrass me about anything. Now I just roll with it. Whatever. I'll answer to anything.
oh yeah, no, I don't get embarrassed easily. I embrace my weirdness.
Yeah. Did you so that also coming up though was like the start of LeeAnn Rhymes. Did you get that?
Oh, when I was in 10th grade is when her hit song came out, How Will I Live Without You?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like prior to that, no one really ever said anything, but then occasionally someone would say, "Hey, LeeAnn Rhymes," like kidding around. And I'd be like, "Yeah, but without the singing voice." Like, because we both were blondes. She had lighter brown blonde hair.
Sure. Did you have any musical? I asked you about like sleepover movies. I'm assuming so. Scream was your top movie. Period. Did you have favorite artists, music of that time?
I feel like I love all music, but I know for a fact that I listened to a lot of Mariah Carey and a lot of Nelly, like 11th and 12th grade. I feel like
Okay.
he's super popular. He collabed with a lot of people. And I feel like to this day, if a song comes on, I can sing it word for word.
For Nelly.
Not well, but yeah. Oh yeah, I
Wow.
definitely know all of Mariah Carey's songs. I think when I was 11, her Christmas music came out, and I was like, I already knew every song she made
Yeah.
prior to that. But yeah, I never get tired of her music. She's a little crazy in real life, but I think
She was one
her
of the
music.
artists we were lucky enough to like, you hear about these generational artists or whatever, and like, when we were kids, my parents would always still talk about Michael Jackson, but I feel like Whitney Houston was a little bit older than us. I feel like Mariah Carey is one of those first real artists that we can say we grew up with. 1990, that she was like dropping on the scene and dropped hits. So like we kind of followed her entire life to see the transition of being like this quiet girl spinning around in the field,
Yeah,
down to like 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 this boss lady who walks out with four guys holding her balance as she walks on 10-inch high heels.
yeah, yeah. I feel like at some point everyone takes a turn, and then she came back. I feel like she came back around. Not as
Absolutely
strong.
right. She had a moment where she like had to go into the hospital for like a little bit of rest and relaxation, right? Like just like Britney did.
Yep. I don't think Brittany came back from that.
No, she did.
She, I
She
feel like her. It's tough with Brittany. I do love her so much, but watching her Instagram is tough. Like I know that she has been through a lot, but I don't know if she's had the access to therapy that she needs. That I feel like I would need if I had been through that.
Yeah, it definitely seems like she was disallowed from growing. Like it
Yeah.
feels like when I look at her Instagram, it feels like a 16-year-old girl who's been trapped in a snow globe doing her dance moves for the last 15, 20 years. And you're just going, oh, you can go out now. You don't have to do that anymore.
And you're like, and then I say those things and I'm like, but she's my age. Like, I'm going to be like, just bring it together. You can do it.
I know,
Everybody
right.
Wants to
yeah, well, you know, with Mariah, it's a great point, right? There's still so much, like, Mariah was like 20 already when we were like such young kids, like, and then she pulled it together, you know, the Nick Cannon thing and all that, and now she's like back and out and making music, and no one's laughing at her when she sings live anymore. Like, I feel like Britney in like the next 5 years could maybe start pulling some things together, get her shit back together, and like be accessible out in the world rather than on that Instagram page.
Yeah, I'd like to hear new music from both of them. I think it would be fun.
Favorite Mariah Carey song?
I definitely like "You'll Always Be My Baby." I feel like it's such a up-spirited song where you're just like, you hear it and you feel good immediately. I do like the ones she did with Boys to Men.
Oh, one Sweet Day.
Yeah. That one, I mean, it was a sad song, but I feel like it came out around the time where I moved back here and my stepdad had died. And I thought about like, just like, I'm not a religious person. So I always kind of felt like, will I ever see him again in an afterlife kind of situation? And it was kind of every Boys to Men song that's like a slow song kind of, I feel like, get you in some way. There's no holding back. I feel like they need to come out. I need more music from them.
Well, you know what? I feel like they're stuck in that nostalgia bubble that they're never going to be able to get out of again. There's a great Netflix show where they talk about like different aspects of pop music, about like the start of like pop country in the 90s. But then there's a whole episode about Boys to Men and the idea of like these young black R&B artists. And then they kind of crossed into the mid 90s, late 90s when all the white pop bands started becoming a thing. And it's like, well, you know, you see Justin and JC and Backstreet Boys and all this on the wall. It's like no one was putting these respectable black men on their walls. And that was kind of like the cave of their popularity after they were so high with that, you know, Water Runs Dry and On Bended Knee. And it was just a different type of marketing that took place for them that kind of killed their career.
Yeah. I never really thought about that. But
I didn't either.
To me, Boys to Men was where they were like a different type of band than Backstreet Boys and NSYNC all together. Like one was strictly like upbeat pop, teeny bopper stuff. But like Boys to Men, they just seem more real, more authentic.
We respected them, yeah, and they were, and like the story of like they knew each other in school in Philadelphia. They were like they sang together on the streets, and like you know got noticed by Michael Bivins, and like there was like a whole story versus like NSYNC and Backstreet. You just heard like, oh, I think they're just like there was a curtain call or there was a casting call, and then they moved to Germany and they trained for 6 months, and then they bring them back to America polished. It was like it was like a reality show without the cameras.
Right. Yeah. That's kind of how I feel about like all the singers. Like, well, I guess Justin Timberlake, Britney, Christina Aguilera, like they all started with Disney. I think Drake did too, right?
Well, Drake was Degrassi. Drake was Nickelodeon or whatever the Canadian thing was up there.
Okay. But I feel like they were all so young in that, and they became individual stars. And I don't know why Justin Timberlake didn't just go for it then, but.
Probably because he was pretty weak. Like you look at the trouble that Justin Bieber had in the beginning, like that probably would have been Justin Timberlake, but it was still that type of pop. I think was still so new when NSYNC was coming out in the late 90s.
You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God, baby Justin Bieber. I was definitely a Bieber fan, and I was like, what? I felt like 6 or 7 years older than him
at
when
least.
He was like. First coming out
more. I feel like he was like 12, 13. We were like in our 20s when like baby was coming. Yeah, it feels like
time doesn't matter anymore. Sometimes I'm driving down the street and I see someone who obviously has their driver's license and I'm like, no,
all the time. All the time. I'll sit out drinking coffee on the weekends and look by and I'll like judge. I'm just like, the couples that are walking. I'm like, this dude looks like he's like 28, and she looks like she might be like 14, 15. Maybe it's his niece. And it's like, no, they're holding hands. I was like, I have no gauge of ages at all.
I feel like I used to be good at it, but no. Since having kids, I'm not. No. My kids look younger. Like we'll be at the playground.
Mm.
A long time ago, we'd be at the playground. They don't go to the playground anymore. And people would go, "Oh, how old's your son? Is he in third grade?" I'm like, "He's a seventh grader." And I'm like, maybe my kids just look super young. I don't know.
What about school? What did you have? Did you have like a best subject, favorite subject, something that you excelled in, or multiples?
Um, well, I was the worst at math, so I can put that right out there. I loved Mr. Russo. He taught
Science, biology.
me, yes.
He had the fake eye, or he had the eye you like pop out or whatever, right?
Yeah. I don't think I ever saw that, but he did talk about
He would tell you
that.
about it all the time. Yeah,
But, and then
I had him as well. I loved him.
I loved him. I thought he was just the nicest guy. The other class I loved the most was oceanography. I do
Oh,
not remember if he taught that or if someone else did, but I took it strictly because we got to go to the Baltimore, Maryland aquarium, and I had never been there. So if I get a field trip out of this class, it's worth it. But I also just love pets and the ocean and learning about animals. So it was probably one of the funnest classes to take.
yeah. There were a few classes like that you would hear about that you had to kind of like you had to pass, you had to get through all the other ones to be able to get to
Yeah.
oceanography to take it, and I can never make it like to that point to take that. It was like I by the time it came around, it's like I got shoveled into some other like science class that was just a drag. That was like messed up on what I wanted to do 2 years ago.
So I felt that way about the class where you got the fake baby. So I didn't ever
Oh
make it
yeah.
to the fake baby. It was like some sort of childcare class that you had to take like before you got to that class. And I just like I don't know why I didn't take that class, but I'm like I always wanted to have the responsibility of like this fake baby they were going to give us, and then I never got it.
That's so TV show. Like the gotta care for the baby. It records every time it cries.
Or I mean, at least give us a sack of flour, but I don't think like high school, there's no real preparing you for taxes and taking care of a family if that's what you choose to have, like at all. Like, I'm like, well, where are those courses? Because they're not in college either.
So one of the biggest things that I've come to realize is my regret at not looking more seriously at like a tech school. I always regret that I don't
Hmm.
have any like real skill sets that I pay so much money annually that for other people to do for me, right? Changing my brakes, my oil, installing an air conditioner, just all these things that like I have no real skill set and no patience and no confidence in. That's like we're just gonna have to get someone to do this. I know I could have learned those things if I was pushed to do that, but all those things that were kind of like life skills, I felt were always looked down upon in school of like, oh, only stupid people go to tech school to learn about cars, or you know what I mean, or to work with their hands, or there was always like this hardcore push of at least in my world to like gotta go to college. But I didn't know what I was going to college for at that, especially at that point.
So I did go to tech school in ninth grade for cosmetology, which is, what my mom did. I always looked at it and thought it was so fun. And so I tried it. The whole year I did not like it. I thought my whole entire life since first grade I wanted to be a teacher. I
Mm.
could not wait. My first grade teacher was Mrs. Posey. I loved her and she was so good at it. I was like, I want to do exactly what you do. And but then I saw, oh, well, like doing hair and makeup would be so fun, which I love. I wear makeup every day. I love it. It's such a fun. I don't feel like I need it, but it's such
Mm.
a fun thing for me to be like, oh, what am I going to look like today? It just wasn't fun there. I think there's so many kids who go into that program. It's just like there's not a lot of like personal help with it. So it
Mm.
just was more of a extension of high school than a fun thing to do. Plus, if you did tech school, you didn't get to do any electives.
Right.
So another thing I really wanted to do was to take French. which I did.
You wanted to.
I did. And so after ninth grade, I went into French in 10th grade, which meant I did French with all the ninth graders because it was French 1. And so it was like, and so I felt like I had a lot of friends that I met that way and that I stayed friends with because we were in that class together. And I was literally the only person who was the next grade up.
So that would have been like, that would have been my class then, that you had French with most of the class of 2001 kids.
Yes.
Isn't that so interesting? So I took Japanese from middle school, and then I took it my freshman year in high school. I was terrible for honors Japanese. It was no English. I couldn't adapt. I couldn't figure it out, and it's like the only class I ever failed in high school. And the next year I had to take a new foreign language, so I took Spanish. And like you, I ended up in Spanish classes with all underclassmen because I was starting from scratch. So it was the exact same thing, and that's where like I ended up like meeting just people from like class of 2002.
Yeah, I actually regret taking French. I had Senor Gant. I loved him, great teacher, but I still talk about to this day. I don't know anybody. I've never encountered a single person who speaks French. I don't live in France or Canada. And I regret not taking Spanish because I do come in contact with people who speak Spanish every day. And I think it would be helpful that I would be able to speak another language, which is why I made my child in ninth grade take Spanish. I don't know if I'll take it next year, but I was like, listen, you're not taking Latin. You're not doing it.
I would take Spanish or Japanese if I could remember any of those today. I would love it. I feel so dumb when people are speaking Spanish, and I live in the middle of a large community of Spanish speaking people, and like I have no idea what anyone's saying on any given basis. I just kind of act like I do, though. I like them to think that I'm listening, even though if I'm not participating, so that they don't talk about me. And so every
once in a while you throw one of those.
Yeah, I do. I literally do. When I'm in the bodega and people are talking, I'll just go like, like I know what they're saying. They can be like, this guy's an asshole, and I'm just like, you're right.
I just also feel like at a help standpoint, like if someone needed help, I feel like I'm more likely to come across someone who speaks Spanish, and I would love to be able to just always help people who need it. And I would hate to be like, I don't know how to help you if I don't understand what you're saying. So just things like that.
Were you an only child?
I am not an only child. My mom and dad had my oldest brother, David, Charlie, and then me. And then when my parents divorced, my stepmom had already had 2 children of her own, which were Brian and Kim. So I'm the youngest of the 5.
Wow.
I mean, they've been my family since I was 2, so they are always like brothers and sisters. There's no step or anything like that. But yeah, so my brother Charlie is a year and 9 months older than me, and where everyone else is significantly older, so we got along the most.
So you followed your brother into Wissahickon. He was ahead of you, already taking classes as you were coming up as well.
Yeah. So when I was in 8th grade, he was in 10th grade. So when I went into 9th grade, he was 11th grade, and I had known most of his friends because every summer coming home from Pittsburgh, I'd spend 1 month at my dad's house, and so I would meet all of his friends. So going into school, I knew all of them, which was great. I had some upperclassmen who didn't, want to make fun of me or whatever, but which was useful. It was useful if I was like, that person's mean. They'd be like, you being mean to my sister. And a lot of people were really, I think, extra nice to me. They'd be like, oh, you're Charlie's sister. I'd be like, yes, I'm going to hone in on that. Not so much the teachers, though. They'd be like, you have an older brother, don't you? And I'd be like, ugh, yep, sure do.
I was going to ask if the teachers ever if the teachers ever make that connection, because I would always hear that. I'm an only child, but I would always hear like, oh, you're so-and-so's brother, you're so-and-so's sister. I'm thinking like, God, is that good or a bad thing that they're making those connections?
Like, maybe. Well, my oldest brother, Brian, jumped out one of the 2-story windows at Wissahickon, and they had still talked about that when I was coming into school.
Nice.
Teachers would be like, oh, Brian Tomer. And I'm like, yep. I don't jump out windows, don't worry. Fine.
The Spider-Man.
I'm a rule follower.
The Spider-Man of Wissahickon.
Yeah, I think that I was probably the only like super well behaved, never got in trouble, probably only went to a Saturday detention because I was like late to class too many times.
Mm-hmm.
I
I,
feel like it was Mr. Wexler, science. You had to like walk from like the furthest point, and he was like in the middle of nowhere, all the way in the back of the building. And I was always late to this class, and he would always write me up. And I was like, my leg, I'm short. I only can move so fast.
but you're running a
He
mile
really,
every day.
that which should tell you how hard I tried to get there.
You're probably just gassed from doing I've already done 4 miles today. By Friday, it's really hard.
Uh,
Did you date? Well, obviously you said by senior year when I had my eyes on you, you were already dating.
yeah, I feel like I dated someone each grade. In ninth grade, I dated Ethan Zargi.
Oh
In
yeah.
10th grade, Chris McQuaid, briefly. In 11th grade, Sean Heaven. And in 12th grade, Andrew Goldman. And then we also dated in college.
So at least Chris, I know, was my grade. So dating down, was that a product of Spanish class?
No,
I mean, our French class. I'm sorry.
no, I don't think I don't know. He probably took Spanish. I don't remember. He was a football player. So starting, I feel like in the summer when we're doing camps at the same time, I feel like we probably just noticed each other. I didn't know any of the underclassmen. Like when I was in eighth grade, I knew nobody of seventh grade.
Hmm.
So fast forward to 10th grade until they came into the school, I didn't really know anybody.
Now, you talked about not too many, like not too clicky and stuff from your perspective. Our class, I felt, despite what people say, was clicky, and I will tell you, Chris McQuaid was in that top, upper echelon, I would say, of like the popular kids. Does that and it's a long time ago, so you may not remember specifically, but like when you're getting a relationship with someone who's got like a whole bunch of other friends, is that like does that become are you aware of that? Are you like a whole new world to you of like, oh wow, there's like he's got like 25 friends and they all party on weekends and
Yeah, I mean, we hung out as a group with a lot of those with Eric Malhorn, Pete Sampone, like a lot of those people. We also hung out like just by ourselves. I remember he worked at McDonald's, so he was pretty
what?
busy.
Wait, what?
He did.
Chris
The
McQuaid
one,
worked at McDonald's?
yeah, I think there was a used to be a McDonald's by the old 309 Cinema. I think that's the one he worked
Okay.
at.
Yeah.
It might have
Wow.
been so.
That blows my
My
mind.
other good friend Andrea worked at that Subway right there. I think it's like now I don't know if Subway's still there, but Whole Foods is.
Next to the TCBY.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I know. I used to get my hair cut at that hair cuttery.
Oh, okay. There used to be a Chuck E. Cheese there too,
Yep.
I think.
Yep.
Crazy story about that Chuck E. Cheese. They were not a super clean place. And when we lived in Texas, I came home to surprise a friend for a birthday party, and I had my son with me who was 18 months at the time, and we went there for the birthday party. The next day, we left, got on a plane to go back to Texas, and when we got there, he couldn't walk, and he had contracted some sort of virus from that Chuck E. Cheese that like attacked his joints.
Oh
So
my
he could
god.
walk before getting on the plane, but by the time we got off, he just like would fall over. And so we had to
Whoa.
like go to like a children's type hospital, and they had run all these tests, and it was so scary. And then after a few days he like got all of his mobility back, but I was like,
Yeah,
I
they caught
am
like
never going to Chuck E. Cheese again.
catch like meningitis or scurvy or something from the ball pit. We used to play there when we weren't kids. We used to like we'd go to the movies there when we were like we were kids, but we were like 12. We were like too old to be playing in the ball pit. We should have only been hanging by the arcades, but we would go and like just take over the ball pit and play tag and stuff in there. It was not that whole area was not clean.
And I don't know if that's even still there, but I know the Chuck E. Cheese by us is just an arcade now. There is no ball pit, there's no tunnels. So I feel like they try to keep it on the cleaner level now, but
Especially now. Yeah, I don't think you can play ball pits feel like they're a thing of the way past now.
which sucks because they're so fun, even though they're germy.
They were. We had a ball pit also at the Ambler McDonald's, and I loved. We used to play there all the time too. We used to play like tag and stuff and hide and go seek in those places. Those were all great time. It's funny like how simple the fun was because now I look at like playlands and I think I wouldn't do anything in there.
No. Yeah, no, we used to go to the Ambler McDonald's when I was in kindergarten because I lived on I want to say Greenwood Avenue.
Okay, yeah, yeah, off of like tennis.
Yes, yes, it is off tennis.
Mhm.
So we would go there all the time, and I remember like those giant hamburgers that you could like climb up in and then like maybe not get back out, and like someone would have to come and rescue you.
And it had like the bars going all the way across where the meat would be, and you could look through the
Yeah.
bars, and yeah.
Uh-huh. And then when I moved back in high school in 12th grade, when you're allowed to leave for lunch, we would go there just to get fries. Like we weren't like eating all the McDonald's food, but we would go there all the time. And now it's gone. I was kind of sad when they
Yeah.
moved it, even though I don't live there anymore. There wasn't a lot of places to go to lunch though. McDonald's was kind of it.
For like a quick, hey, I got 35-minute period. Yeah, it was like the McDonald's. You could maybe hop
So
up
Wawa.
309. Yeah, you go to Wawa. You could hop up to like the Taco Bell. But other than that, in our area in that time, it was like Rich's other place was like the big like lunch
Oh
spot.
yeah,
But you
yes,
needed like an hour to get there to do that.
yeah. I mean, now you probably just order from an app and you pick it up, and
Pick
it's
it up.
just
I
like
get my
wait.
waiting in the car
I'm
for my
about to
cheese
be
steak.
old and be like, kids have it so easy these days.
We had to go in everywhere.
We had to walk inside.
I go to places now and like I'll see like a McDonald's or something and I'll be at the drive-through and then they'll have a sign on the window that says pick up here and I'm thinking they got pick up for McDonald's. I can't even like even delivery for McDonald's is unfathomable. I'm like especially with the charges.
Right. Yes. The charges are up there, especially now. They added even more charges with all the gas increases. We
Hmm.
went to order a pizza the other day and the upcharge was $18. I'm like, I live 3 minutes from you.
I'll just walk over there.
How? Yeah. Ugh. But I am definitely, I feel like all the people I talked to who were obviously in high school at one point hated it. I'm like, I loved high school. I loved seeing my friends every day. Again, I never really lived in a neighborhood. So, like, high school was the place where I got to see everybody every day. I always worked, I feel like I worked really hard at getting a grade. So, I did also like most of my teachers.
Hmm.
And it just was like a positive experience.
What kind of grades did you get?
Well, not in math,
Skip
but
that one.
well, A's and B's. I think to do sports for most sports, you had to have at least a C. So I know my math grade never dropped below a C, but it just was never going to be a. I mean, I guess I got a couple 3.0 GPAs at some point, but I feel like I was never a straight A student, but I always worked really. I don't think I was a good test taker.
Hmm.
Good at like getting my homework done and preparing for tests, but then I'd take a test and be like, "What?" And then
I was
I'd say,
terrible.
"Teacher, I don't know how this happened."
I was a terrible studier. I couldn't the whole style of like, writing notes, copying notes on the board from the board and or the transparent sheet. I couldn't I was just not good at retaining information. I could listen, but if I'm just like writing, I'm like I don't know if it's an OCD thing, but I'm like, okay, got to get this Roman numeral 1 and then capital letter A and then a number 1 and lowercase a. I was like so preoccupied with the format of the outline and making it look good that I was not really paying attention to the lecture, and I certainly never went back and read the notes again for a test.
I kind of feel like
Studying, as the kids call it.
had we been allowed to have phones then, like we could have just like been like "Shoot," and take a picture, and then you would take it all in more. And I
Mhm.
just feel like I wasn't good at taking notes either.
So you went in ninth grade and you do cosmetology. You hate it. What happens to like your ideas of future career? Are you back on maybe I want to be a teacher?
Yeah, so I decided to go back on that same path. I had actually, my senior year, I had applied to a few schools. The guidance counselor never sent out any of my applications. And it happened to
No.
like two other people and who had my same guidance counselor. And I will say that not that I feel like I wasn't a smart person at all, but these kids were probably applying to like top schools. and by the time they applied, they were waitlisted because they were completely screwed over by her. So I ended up going to Montgomery County Community College for 2 years, graduated with my associates, and then I transferred to Temple. And then I went to Temple Ambler, so I never really had to go into the city. And so I did go for early education. And then the first school I worked at, surprisingly, was Wissahickon
Get out.
as a temp sub for that whole first year.
What was that like going back?
I
Where
mean,
did you go? To the high school or another school?
you were all over as a sub. They basically call you at 6 a.m. the morning of and say, this is where we'll need you. Occasionally, you'll get a job where they're like, okay, this teacher's out for 2 weeks, so you'll be here every day for 2 weeks. So literally every school I was at. The high school was the funnest because I was there the longest, but people like teachers would be like, hey, you're late for class. And I'd be like, I'm a teacher. And nobody would believe me. I'm like, how many other high school kids are dressed like this? And so that was rough, but just because I felt like so accomplished, and then someone would be like, hey, student, and I'd be like, oh, no.
That was old
And
me.
then,
That was old me.
yeah, but I had only worked in Wissahickon for 1 year, and then my husband and I went on vacation to Texas and bought a home, and 1 month later we moved.
Wow. You just loved it?
Well, yes and no. The housing there, like you're getting a brand new house with like a huge house with a custom pool and hardwood floors and AC and all these things. And we were looking at homes already in King of Prussia, and they were houses that were 100 years old that needed everything, and they were 300,000 to 400,000. Well, in Texas, our home was 136K.
Wow.
And
What part
so
of Texas?
we were North Texas, so we were Arlington.
Okay.
So it's like maybe an hour from Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
So we just kind of weighed those options and was like, yeah, I would rather have this than stay in Pennsylvania. And so we moved within a month.
Wow.
I did not get a teaching job there. Something fun they like to do every year is they hire like all these teachers, and then they fire them when they don't need as many as they hired. So it was like never going to be a stable position. We had our baby within 4 months. Well, we got pregnant with our child within 4 months of living there. So then we also now were going to have a baby. So I'm like, well, now definitely no one's going to hire me now that I'm going to have to take time off.
Right.
So while living there, I went back to being a nanny, which is what I did in high school too. Besides Coneheads, I also worked with a family, and after school, I would go there. Their kids would get home after I was, done 12th grade. And I worked for them for 5 years. So working with kids was easy. And then in Texas, I ended up being a nanny the whole time, and I worked for a really great family there for 5 or 6 years as well.
How at that point of you making that switch, how committed did you feel to teaching that now you're realizing like this is not going to happen? Is that a heartbreak? Is that like, oh, well, let me just figure something, like how did you process that? How's that feel?
Well, I will say with in Texas, a lot of teaching is different there, where the pay is significantly lowered. Where like I knew kindergarten teachers who made $90,000 because they had their master's degree versus making $30,000 as a teacher with your bachelor's. I mean, it was like I could make that same amount as a nanny. So why would I? It's a more flexible position. Ultimately, there's also no lesson plans as a nanny.
Very true.
Lesson plans are terrible. Nobody likes to do them. But another thing with obviously with being a teacher, there's a union and there's benefits. But my husband had benefits, so I didn't really need them. And as the years went on, the more teachers I knew, and I have a lot of friends who are teachers, they hated it because then there was all about teaching to the test, and all they needed to do was for you to get high scores on all those state funding tests they have to do, because or else they wouldn't get the funding. And I just thought, well, that sounds terrible. It's just not what it seemed like growing up what a teacher was. I thought the kids showed up and that you gave them your everything and you were kind to them and you helped mold them into that next year they were going to. And it's just, as much as I'd like to believe teachers still do that, a lot of them are broken,
Right.
especially after the past 2 years. Good friends that are like, I just know there's like defeat there. And that makes me sad because I know they all have such big hearts. But I just, now knowing what I know, it's just not ever going to be the job for me.
What sparked that passion in the first place? You had mentioned that prior to going in cosmetology, which was your mom's influence, you thought you did want to be a teacher. Why, when you were younger, did you want to be a teacher? You had spent your time pretending you were in an office.
Yeah, I think that my first grade teacher was just so loving and caring. And every day you came into school, she was just so excited to see you. And you never walked into that class and thought, I just want to be home, or, oh, we're going to do all this work. Like, it didn't feel that way. And I did have some teachers growing up that I wasn't like crazy about, but she just made it so, like, she would even give us papers to take home for fun. And then I would make my mom do them just so I could grade them. I'm sure she loved that. She was like, ah. I'm like, just do anything. It doesn't matter. I just need to grade it. And that kind of stuff was fun to me. But now there's just so much put on. I don't think teachers get paid nearly enough.
No,
like, they
no,
need
not at
to
all.
pay triple. So, yeah, I think it takes a special person to do that job.
That's
today.
so interesting because, being that it was your first grade teacher, because that was right when you had moved to Pittsburgh.
Right.
So I'm curious, like, had you had stayed at Wissahickon, would you have had that passion growing up of wanting to be a teacher with, Mrs. Graybill or whoever was the, first grade teacher?
Well, I don't know, but my kindergarten teacher at Madison Avenue was Mrs. Jones.
Same.
And I loved her.
Me too.
And when I moved, she gave me this little brown bag of like glue sticks and stuff for me to like take with me. And when I came back in 8th grade, I went back to Madison Avenue just so I could see her. She was still there and she absolutely remembered me.
Wow.
She was top teacher.
Yeah, I remember. I mean, I went to Madison too for my first 4 years before the Shady Grove move, 4th grade. But yeah, I remember all of my teachers, but Mrs. Jones is like the first best.
Yeah.
When you talk about it's like, oh, it started off great with her. She was awesome.
Yep, she really was.
What do you think if you hadn't been into teaching, did you have a second thing that you thought, like what schools were you applying to?
I applied to Westchester, Penn State, Temple. I think it was just really just those 3.
Or at least the ones that you had wanted to apply to that never got the application. Right. And what do you think that it would have always been teaching? Did you have anything else in your back pocket that you thought maybe you wanted to do, could be good at?
No, I absolutely didn't. Now I kind of think, like, knowing the person I am today, I kind of think I would have really thrived if I worked in like the NIC unit in a hospital where you're caring for those babies. I know that it's not always happy times there,
Sure.
but there's a lot of happy times looking at cute little babies all day. I'd like to think when I'm older that I'll volunteer my time to be one of the people who just like holds the babies, gets to rock them back to sleep or feed them or whatever help they need. I don't know. I could be day one and be like, I can't do it, but I do really love kids. But
did you have a focus when you're in education of where you wanted to end up for a grade or a subject for first teaching?
Well, I always wanted to do kindergarten or 1st grade. I really love the younger kids. You don't get to choose. So you could be a kindergarten teacher for 20 years and all of a sudden your district can say, okay, now you're going to be a 5th grade teacher. Like, it just depends on where you are and if they want to give you a say or not.
I didn't know that.
But each district's different. But they also, state to state. I'm sure there's different rules state to state. I don't know a lot of teachers in Texas to know how they're different, but most of the Texas teachers I know are here.
Mm. Just because with you
Go
saying
ahead.
Nick unit and then your experience with nannying, and then I was wondering, is like I feel like that is like the wheelhouse that you were going to say as far as like much younger versus like I want to teach 16-year-olds, you know.
Yeah. No. No, that sounds terrible. My son's 14 turning 15 this summer, and no, I don't think he's a very polite, very respectful kid, but no, I cannot
But his
imagine.
friends,
Maybe no.
his friends are all
And
deviants.
and then girls on top of it. So again, my daughter who's 10, I have coached the past couple of years, helped out with her teams and stuff, and she again is a very shy, quiet girl, but some of these girls are at like a level 10, and I'm definitely going to age myself again when I go, I wish I could just bottle up your energy, because you're like, do you ever stop? Like, it's a lot. And it's not even just their energy, it's the amount of talking. You feel like they're never going to stop talking. And you're like, what are you saying?
Did you ever think about taking cheerleading into college? I mean, I don't know if I don't think Monco has a cheerleading
No,
team, so that would have kiboshed it.
Temple did. Temple did. By that time, I had met my husband and we were living together, and it was just like I had already was work. I was a waitress and I was a nanny, and I was just not. And then school full time. I wasn't. There was no way I was going to add in another thing.
Yeah.
I did pledge a sorority. That did not work out. Again, it was too much. Like, they wanted you to be there for all of these extra things, and it was like I was already spread so thin.
Mm.
So
A
uh,
Temple Ambler sorority?
yes,
Boy, that's a lot of qualifiers.
there's a lot. There is a lot of sororities that camp out there, and it wasn't big. I feel like there was like 8 or 9 girls,
Uh-huh.
and then they would take in some new pledges. I don't know how many people made it to the end, but I
Wow.
didn't. I feel
Um
like I'm already a functioning adult. Like, I wasn't a child. Like, I feel like when you're like 18 and 19, you're still really a child. So going into something like that, you probably don't have 2 jobs and in
hmm.
school full time. Your parents are probably paying for all of your stuff, where I was paying for all of my stuff. So I feel like that level of adult, I was probably really 25 as a 19-year-old.
Hmm. Where were you waitressing at that point then?
I worked at Hooters for 6 years,
Oh, get out.
thinking, yeah,
The one in
which
so
is
that
also like a sorority.
yeah, that was like a that boy that so that was like always a place I didn't think as a kid I was allowed to go into. And I remember like
Oh,
maybe like senior year of high school, I had a few older friends from Wissahickon, and I want to say like maybe like junior, maybe even sophomore. I don't think I drove yet, so sophomore, junior year, maybe at the most. But like they would pick me up and we'd go to like one time we like went to Hooters in the one on Delaware Avenue, um,
oh,
and it was like, oh my god, like can we get in here? And I was so unimpressed by the wings.
oh. Uh,
Like,
it definitely depends on where you go. I was in the King of Prussia one, which was right next to Red Lobster. It's not
mhm.
there anymore. They moved it, but
It
it
was like all
was,
by itself off on the side. I remember,
yeah.
yeah.
But a lot of families went in there. You'd be surprised how many like full family, like the wife,
Oh
kids,
no,
everybody
no,
wasn't.
no. I've had like family members that like I had an uncle that used to have his baseball. Like I said, we used to go for ice cream. They would take the kids to Hooters.
Yeah, we had a lot of people would bring for like car washes and stuff, would be in the parking lot. And I mean, people would be like, oh, I'm already coming to get my lunch, I might as well get my car washed, and they would make a ton of money for their fundraisers.
Um, good
A
job.
couple other girls from our high school worked.
Really?
Yeah, it was like, I mean, your basic wait job.
I mean, you say that, but like
Pretty easy.
in a like a hormone fueled high school, someone's working, you hear about someone's working at Hooters, all you think about is like, oh, the size of their boobs. Like that's when you're like 16 years old, that's all that would come into your mind. And I imagine that's what most of the grown men.
Well, so you would know, so you would probably think that, and probably other people might have experienced that, but I didn't. Most of the people just came in, order food like it was any other place, and left. You'd have regulars, but even they wouldn't be inappropriate because they knew if they were, they'd be asked to leave. So
Okay.
I never really encountered anything like that in the 6 years that I worked there. But our managers were also pretty good at, if it was a Friday or Saturday night and someone had drank too much and was like getting too rowdy, to like make them leave before I guess they could do anything like that. I had actually never heard of it. It was my senior year when other boys that were graduating with me were like, "Oh, we went to Hooters last night." And they just kept talking about it. I'm like, "What is this place everyone's going to?" And I looked it up and I'm like, "Oh, it's a restaurant." And then my friend Jenny was like, "Let's go get jobs there." So then we did. And then a year or two later, another one of our good friends, Lisa Heberly, got a job there. Yep. And she worked there probably just as long as I did.
When you get there, I'm so curious about this, about just like the realization of like the shirts and the shorts. When you get that, are you like, oh my God? Do you get body conscious? Are you just like, whatever, like just fucking turn on the personality and make the tips and whatever?
Well, I guess there are probably people who are body conscious. Our location, they hired people of all shapes and sizes. We even had people who were pregnant who worked there. They were very accommodating. Honestly, the stockings hold most of you in. So if you're putting on a pair of shorts and a tank top, I mean, you're still more covered than if you're wearing a bikini on the beach. So it wasn't really like that big of a deal to me.
I still hear stories about like Hooters clothing and how there's like bootleg or stores that are doing, or restaurants that do like bootleg clothing, and so they pull out like the skimpier clothes and make the girls wear that, and it's not like the regulated Hooters clothing in certain restaurants.
Oh, so that I don't know.
Okay.
It's been a very long time. I think when I left there in 2006 is when I moved to Texas, and then didn't work there when I lived in Texas. There are definitely other restaurants that aren't Hooters that have just as skimpy outfits. I mean, the tilted
kilt, yeah.
They wore like a top and then a super short skirt. And I don't think that I could have had my stomach exposed. Like, just personally, I feel like that would have been just for the fact that food would, I feel like it would burn you. Like if a wing fell on my stomach, like I had a thick shirt to protect me, but like head out the fryer, I just think of like the practical part of it. Like, I don't want a French fry burning me because I'm not wearing.
Yeah, grease splatters on your stomach are not fun once you're not working there anymore. You go, oh, this is my memory from Hooters right here. this 3rd-degree burn on my belly button, the good old days.
Let me tell you about this wing-shaped mark here.
This is a flat. Did you grow to love buffalo wings, hate buffalo wings, or indifferent?
You know, I don't feel like I ate a lot of wings when I worked there. They had buffalo shrimp that were my favorite.
Oh yeah, that is good.
And so those were pretty good. They probably lost their appeal in so many years, because probably rewind 5 or 6 years ago, my husband does a lot of fantasy football leagues, and that's one of the places they used to meet. So I'd be like, "Oh, bring me back some buffalo shrimp," and then he'd bring it to me, and I'd be like, "Well, these don't taste good."
It's not like you remember it.
I'd be so disappointed, and I'm like, I don't know if it's because the time it took you to drive it to me, and it wasn't like fresh out the, fry basket, or what. But it wasn't as good as I remember.
No, that's how it always is. Listen, I did a decade working at Wawa, and to this day now, when I eat a Wawa hoagie, I'm so let down. I'm so disappointed at the taste. It's nothing like what it used to be back in the 90s, back before, everything was organic.
I used to have the crappiest Wawa order that whenever someone was going to Wawa, they would not get a hoagie for me, because I would just, and you had to order over the counter. There was no like orders or anything.
When we did it, we had the slip with the grease pencil that we'd have to mark up for you, and then we'd hand you the slip with a number on it.
And so my order was always just like lettuce, tomato, onion, banana peppers, and then I would get 2 slices of American cheese, no meat. And they'd be like, just the two? And they would charge me $2 because they didn't feel like I was getting anything. But I never wanted to call it a cheese hoagie because then they would put like 20
6.
pieces of cheese on it and it was like too much cheese. And I didn't want to be wasteful because I was just going to take it off and throw it away. So I would always be like super crazy. And to this day, my brother's like, I'm not getting you a hoagie. And I'm like, I don't eat like that anymore.
What would you get? A shorty? A shorty? The shorty cheese hoagie?
No, I would always get a classic.
Oh
Always.
wow! So you're getting 2 pieces on a classic. Yeah, that's supposed to get like 8 pieces of cheese.
Yeah,
Oh
I know.
wow! I would have definitely. Let me tell you, that would always be. So there's always like just like your brain when you're making orders, you just want to like, okay, let me run down this thing. And so whenever anyone deviates from that, you just look at them like seriously, and and then
Yeah.
like your brain can't figure out how to like jump back in line. Like, all right, I'll just do what they say because you're just so used to following like the policy.
Right. How you're supposed to do it. Yeah, that makes sense. I just never wanted to be wasteful.
It was a lot of cheese though. Also, it was a lot of cheese. And you mentioned that Subway. That's why I like Subway because Subway had, I thought, better like green vegetables. Like that, I liked that they had like spinach and jalapenos and.
Yeah. Subway. So I liked old school Subway when they cut the tap out
Oh
versus
yeah,
they cut it sideways. And I would always get the Subway seafood and crab, which I know is not real crab, but it was my favorite. And when I moved to Texas, they don't have that
yeah,
there.
no shit.
I was, I was so disappointed. I once drove an hour to a location just because they had it, and it was like the best day of my life.
You know who told me about the seafood and crab and that it's not real crab? Mr. Rezepka from Econ. He franchised
Yes, I
Subways,
remember that.
and he would
I
give those
totally remember
examples.
that.
And he would talk about like crabs started increasing in price, and so his option was to go to imitation crab or raise the price of the seafood and crab sandwich. And he'd talk about weighing the pros and cons of losing customers because you're giving them imitation crab versus those that are just willing to pay the increase.
Right. No, you know what? I'm going to tell you, ever since I lived in Pittsburgh, first grade, Subway was always one of my favorite places to eat. My mom said, "Where do you want to go?" I'd say Subway. And I've always gotten imitation crab. I've never, ever had real crab at any Subway.
Wow.
And
You got
although I actually like the imitation crab better if it's going to be on a sandwich. Like I love crab by itself,
mm.
but now I don't eat it because it has a lot of sugar in it.
Really, crab does.
Well, the imitation stuff.
Imitation crab. Okay.
They're making it out of like pollock and other stuff, but they always add in a crap ton of sugar with everything.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't do imitation crab ever. In fact, I don't even like was it crab stick and sushi? I'm like, don't give me that stuff either.
Imitation too. Yeah.
Yeah, like don't give me that at all. I don't want that. I'll take something. I'll take squid, whatever. Like no crab, no imitation crab. You had mentioned like a Miss Pennsylvania. Is that what was it called? Miss Pennsylvania, like a beauty pageant? Is that what it was?
It was the state Miss Pennsylvania state pageant, and
Where does that
I
come
don't
from?
I don't know how I got asked to do that, but once you're asked to do it, you have to fill out like all these applications, and if they accept you, you then have to go like within your community and get all these sponsors, and you have to raise like a significant amount of money towards the pageant, which I guess is just to like show that your community's behind you, because
Hmm.
essentially when you become it, you have to travel all over the state and do things for, make appearances and all that stuff. Um, so I filled out the stuff, they got accepted. I raised all the funds, and then I had moved to Texas. So I had flew back to go to the pageant knowing like I'm fulfilling this obligation, but I obviously couldn't win. I didn't live there anymore. Um, but I think I came in 19th for that
Okay.
year. You don't get anything for that, by the way. I have lots of princess crowns, but none of them are for actually winning anything.
Was that the only one, or were there like regional competitions that you had to like go through, or just the one and
No,
done?
that was it. Once you do that, there's other pageants you can do to get up to, like, I think the owner of that pageant is Donald Trump. So
Oh,
he
is that
has
like the Miss Universe?
yeah, like eventually you can get to there.
Yeah, the one where
So
he's in the locker rooms with the girls changing. That one. Yeah.
yeah,
Boy, did you luck out.
I did. I was 24 when I was in that I was actually just turning 25. It was like a week later, and you can only do those pageants until you're 26 anyway.
Okay.
And I also didn't know it at the time, but I was also pregnant. So you also can't do them if you have children. So there's lots of rules
Because
that
you're
I would have
Miss.
qualified, yeah, after that. But yeah, that was always a fun little secret that I was there this whole time, and I was never like, it was, I was an undercover person.
That's a pretty like heavy commitment, though. I would imagine, like having to get all the signatures and everything. Did you get your hopes high for it? Were you just like, I mean, I know you don't remember how, but were you just like, well, we'll just see what happens? Did you ever take it very seriously?
I thought that it would be something fun to do. I didn't think that I would be accepted and asked to do it. I knew that I had a lot of family and friends that were like small business owners, so I knew that part would be probably the easiest thing to do. Going there and being around what I think was over 100 other girls, that was a lot. They were from all over. Most of them were really, really nice. Some of them were very serious about it.
Yeah.
At that point, when I had to like do interviews and stuff, I just had fun with it because I was like, doesn't matter how serious I can be with it. They're like, I can't get chosen. So honestly, when they asked me questions, I talked about my dog.
Where'd you meet your husband?
So we met at Pepper's restaurant in King of Prussia.
Okay.
It was a spot that a lot of girls from work it's like right across the street, and we would go there after work. I worked mostly days, so it wasn't like no one was going there at 5 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
But that night I was supposed to meet my best friend somewhere. The Blue Dog Cafe. I don't know if you.
Yeah, in Lansdale.
Not the one in Lansdale. There's a
one
second one.
Yeah, the one in Chalfont.
Yes. So we get there, and there
I know
is
all
like
the Blue Dogs.
Yeah. And there's a line out the door of 50 people, and the place is probably closing in 30 minutes. And she's like, come inside. And I'm like, they're not letting anybody in. So then I called my friend Kelly and said, where do you want to meet? And she said, how about Peppers? It was like a Tuesday night. There was probably 6 people in the whole place.
Nice.
And I was with her, and we were playing darts. And my husband was with his friends, and they were playing pool. And my friend had put quarters up to play with them because he was, by himself. And somehow his quarters went missing. So when his quarters went missing, one of his friends came over to be like, hey, I know you had quarters up there. I don't know where they went. Do you want to just play with us? And so he was like, yeah. And so eventually he came over to talk to me. And but the pickup line that I tried to completely ignore was I went over to the bar to check my phone. And again, nobody is sitting at the whole entire bar. It's just my stuff. And I go to look at my phone, and he says to me, you don't have to call me. I'm sitting right here. And I just try to like, nope, because I couldn't, like, I wanted to laugh, but I didn't want to pay a stranger attention. Like, that wasn't my personality. But he came over and started talking to us. We probably talked for 2 hours. At the end of the night, I gave him my phone number. He didn't ask me for it. I had never given anyone my phone number before. I was like, and then he called me, and the next day, and we talked for like 3 hours. And
wow.
Now, next month, we celebrate 19 years. He does not talk on the phone. We do not call each other.
Text her?
He will text me, and that's it. So, like, looking back at that time, like, he was like, you really spent some time thinking do I want to take her out on a date? But we did. Then we went to, our first date was Reed's in Bluebell.
Well, of course. The other staple of the suburbs.
Because why not? I had actually never been there before then.
Oh, really?
I had always gone out to the city. I had never gone locally because everyone knew me locally. They'd be like, she's not old enough to be here. But I was 21 when I met him. So
now you can hit the big spots like Reed's now that you're legally able to drink. The big warehouse with a bar in the middle.
Yes, basically. But I always thought it was fun. They had a dance floor. They always had live music.
Oh, Reed's was
He
always popping. I saw Yin Yang Twins at Reed's once. It was that place was, yeah. Reed's had it going on in its day.
But I mean, they had a dance floor. He
Hmm.
danced that first night. He's not a dancer, so that was like a bait and switch. But yeah, basically from that day on, we spent every day together, and then we moved in together like right away. And then Texas happened, and then he wanted. We had two children there. I have both Jackson and Taylor. And when she was 1, he said, you know, I'd rather just like live closer to your family. I have a bigger family, and most of them live here, and he just wanted more of that family atmosphere for them.
Mm.
He had moved all over his whole life. He was born in the Netherlands. His dad was in the military. He
Oh
lived
wow.
in all over the country. Um,
So he doesn't
so
call a singular place home necessarily.
I think Pennsylvania. I want to say I know he definitely went to high school there. I don't know how old he was when he moved to Pennsylvania. He lived in Upper Marion. That's the school he went to.
Oh, okay.
I feel like because he went there for like his high school career, that's probably where he does call home. But I also think he's lived here the longest.
Okay.
He
Yeah, I was
definitely has the longest.
I was gonna say so many things about that are just like so foreign about the way you guys met is so foreign to like modern day to just have like very simple like accidental kind of like meeting of someone to where it's not like this it's not a dating app even
No.
down to like when you said I gave him my number like like I gave him a like that doesn't
On
even
paper.
yeah, like that doesn't even ever happen nowadays. Even if you were to meet someone, it would be like pulling out the like, "Hey, let me get your number here."
Yeah. Yeah, I just said to him last night, I said, you know, what if we had never met? I'm like, do you think you would be married right now? And he said, I do think I'd be married. And I'm like, I don't know. I feel like I'm an easy person to live with, but I feel like we were supposed to meet when we did, and
Mm.
that's why 19 years later it's still all fluid.
When you were younger, did you have any like thoughts about family, kids? Was that something that was like in your
Yeah, I always wanted I had a plan. My plan was I was going to have a baby when I was 27.
Okay.
It was going to be a boy, and that was it.
Okay.
And then at 25, which I thought I was way too young to have kids, I had my son, was a boy.
Hmm.
And then so many people, once you have kids, are like, when are you having another kid? Well, when are you having another baby? And I'm like, I just had a
Yeah,
baby.
too
I'm going to need to
so many
pump
people
the
need to
brakes.
mind their business. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just always thought, well, when he's potty trained, maybe we'll try to have another baby. But he was potty trained like so fast, like he's so smart. And then I thought, oh, well, maybe when he's in preschool. But then when he was in preschool, I was like, ee. And then when he was in kindergarten, I'm like, they're already in kindergarten. They're already going to be 5 years apart. So they're 5 years apart.
Okay. Um did you want them did you have a difference you talk about like the schools in Texas, did you have a strong feeling one way or another as that was like approaching of I know the Pennsylvania thing just kind of like happened out of wanting to come closer to family, but was there any like we gotta get them out of these Texas schools, this isn't going to do it, want to bring like do you have an affinity for like PA education system?
Yeah, no, Texas has better schools.
Really?
Like they were learning things a year before my friends' kids here were learning them.
Get out.
So we were definitely happy with our school system there.
Interesting.
And
I've
I also, because I was a nanny, I also took care of older kids who were in, you know, the same type of school system but not the same district, and there was pretty open throughout the board, and it was, I don't know, I wish it was like that here.
What's the? I'm curious. What is the? Is it just the speed? Is it the subjects that they're shoving in at an early? Like, what is it that makes it so different?
You know, I actually personally think it's the little monthly awards they would give the kids. They would find a way to celebrate every kid, but not in a, oh, it's Jackson's turn to be star of the month. They would find out like who's being a good citizen, who did we recognize helping other kids. Oh, who really excelled in their computer program this month?
Mm.
And they would find a way to show those kids like where they were really good at, and recognize them in the whole school for it. And I feel like that just makes a difference in
Mm.
kids who are just sitting there who are never recognized. Like, sure, there's always going to be these star athletes and these academic kids who are up there. But what about everybody else? And I feel like they were really good at like making them shine in whatever they were good at, and that showed in their
That's a
academic.
That's a great point. I talk often about, we had safeties in our elementary school. I don't know if you saw it in your kindergarten in Madison, but we had safeties. We had enrichment programs. I wasn't in any of that stuff. I was never like the kid to be pulled out into any special program. Wasn't targeted for AP by my guidance counselor in middle school. I didn't have any. I was just like a very middle of the road CP, class kid that never got recognized for anything too particular. I think that's why I gravitated towards the arts, because that was the only thing where I could like stand out and like, oh, you get to do this in the play, or you get to do this, or at the most we'd have like assemblies and you'd maybe like read a poem or something in front of like all the parents and stuff, and that would be like my only time to get to shine, was to like read this poem or something. And I do wish I had something that, like when you say computers, like I was great at computers. Like I just wish there was something like that that gave me a little bit of like boost, versus feeling like, boy, I must be like number 258 of like 260 kids in this class.
Right, right. And it's even hard when you play sports, because again, if you're not that shining star but you're still part of the team, like they're just not really recognizing you. Where I feel like in the school system in Texas, they were very on point with that kind of stuff.
Interesting.
And
Did you do it?
I don't necessarily know if that was only elementary or if it projected onto middle school for them, but I do hope that those teachers continue to do that, because I think that's big.
Yeah, but you know what though? Like those are the things that I think help when you're getting closer to like, we have to start looking at college. And you talked about like all the things in life that like everything we learn, none of that stuff really prepares you. I do wish that there was something, because I feel like in elementary school when you're doing like art or computer or whatever, like those are the ages where like you can push a kid toward something different other than just like, well, I'm good at history, or I'm good at science, or I'm good at math. Like those are kind of like the extra ones that like help push you into a path that maybe you didn't see. And I know for me especially, like I thought I was going to I thought I was going to do musicals. I thought I was going to go to Broadway, or be an actor or something like that. And I know that there were times when like that wasn't working, and I was just like, I don't know what else I would do. I've never been recognized in any other thing other than arts, and so I have no clue what else that could be. It was like, for me, that was like very, difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. My son, he's in high school right now, and they're like, well, next year he could take Spanish too, or he could take photography too. And I'm like, well, ask him what he wants to do, because he's got to make the choice. I mean, I hope that he chooses Spanish because he likes to take pictures, but in photography they use old school cameras where you have
Right.
to develop the film. And while I think it's cool to learn that, that's just not today's world. So I'm like, I need him to be on today's level, because does he want to be a photographer? I don't know, but if he does, like, great, keep doing that. But I also kind of feel like when I took ceramics class in 12th grade, that it was a waste. I loved doing it, but it did not prepare me for one thing today.
I know ceramics not exactly in that world. I'm like thinking of like your mugs and stuff with like different art and stuff. I'm very curious about not just that, but then obviously you've got a gang of oils behind you. Where did this entrepreneurship aspect of your life? How did this all start?
Well, when we were moving home from Texas, my husband wanted to move home. His name's Dan. Dan wanted to move home. I did not. I loved it there. The people were friendly. Nobody had road rage like they do here. Like every highway is like 16 lanes, so you could just get where you were going. Here, you're stuck behind one slow person, and that person has ruined your whole day.
I just
So
told my girlfriend that Philly drivers are a different breed. I think more than New York, it's a different breed than anywhere else in this country.
yeah, I would agree. And so I just loved everything about it there. I also loved the weather. I didn't love the tornadoes. That was a little scary
Okay.
towards the end. We didn't have to experience a lot of that, but there was one pretty scary year. So I said moving home that I wanted to be able to work from home. So I could be with the kids because when I had worked there, I drove an hour and 15 minutes to work each day, sometimes several hours home because of accidents or whatever. And I was just outside of the home 70 hours a week. And I had, this baby that I wasn't spending all this time with. So fast forward to he's 5, and now I have a new baby who's turning 1 that I just wanted to be able to be accessible to them. So, and the home we were moving into had a side entrance, which I made into a daycare. So it was called the Learning Room. And that's where I actually had several people from high school bring their kids there. They, remembered me from high school. They trusted me. One of those people is Andrew Pileggi. We're actually going on vacation together next
Oh
month.
wow.
Like, we're all still good friends.
I just saw him at the car show this weekend too.
Oh, yeah. Love that dude. He's so funny. So I did that, and then I did that basically until we moved to Exeter. I'm in Exeter now, which is a sub of Reading, and so I wanted to be home then. So when I was there, I started making organic skincare products, and that was fun for a while. But then it got to be a lot, and so my husband was like, "What if we had like a mug making business where we could put whatever we wanted on mugs, and just like from our home?" So by we, he meant me. So we figured it out and we started making mugs. And all the mugs that he would tell me to make were like flops. Like nobody wanted to buy them.
I got a great idea.
He used to say hotcakes. They're going to sell like hotcakes. But God bless his heart. He is such a hard worker. And he was just, working 12-hour days, sometimes 6 days a week. So he really just wasn't even home to be doing the mugs anyway. And then I would just basically, like, you would say, "Hey, LeeAnn, I'd like to put this on a mug." I'd put it on a mug, and then I'd put it in my Etsy shop. And other people would want to buy it too. So I always just went off what customers wanted.
Smart.
But we had 2 really big mugs that blew up that in like a month grossed over $10,000.
Wow.
Our first mug was when Trump was elected, and it said, "I hate when I wake up in the morning and Donald Trump is still president." Now, that was a saying for Obama. It was a saying for Bush. Like, we didn't come up with it. It's just whoever the president is, you put it on the mug. People who don't like him will buy it. And everybody bought it. Like, so many mugs. Like, we were a mug factory. I felt like I wasn't sleeping. I had shipped so many mugs, and people continued to buy that over the next 4 years. I did make pro-Trump mugs that people were like, "Well, what about this? What about that?" And I said, "Well, we'll make any mug that you want, not any mug." Like, I had some rules, but any mug that's, if someone wants to order it, I'm not going to make it. They just didn't sell. They weren't the big sellers.
Sure.
The next biggest seller was during COVID when Tiger King hit.
Oh yeah.
Like, people could not stay away from it. It was like the trashier looking the mug, the better. Like, they ate it up. People were buying 10 mugs at a time to give out to their coworkers in COVID.
Oh god.
Because nobody was watching anything but that. And it was like, that was probably 3 months of not being able to stop. Like, I couldn't keep mugs in my house. I was ordering thousands at a time.
Oh, that's hilarious.
And it was just, so it was fun. And then I branched out to t-shirts. A lot of people love personal t-shirts. I love to make onesies. Not a lot of people buy as many onesies because they just like, buy something cute from the store. That's my favorite item to make. And
obviously that's following the trend of like you with little babies. That's like kind of the trend for you.
Yeah, there it is again. You're right. And then 4 years ago, another friend from school, Eric Fenstemacher, who I'd also watched his baby in the Learning Room, Tyson, his wife, Courtney, and I had become good friends, and she had been using Young Living for a couple years. So I had joined one of her Facebook groups just to be like, supporting my friend, being present in her group. And I just decided, like, I'm going to buy a bunch of oils. So I did. And the story behind that is my daughter Taylor, when she turned 1, she stopped taking naps. So she would not, I mean, kids are supposed to take naps probably until they're like 3. Most kids just take it, they need it.
LeeAnn, I
And
took a
she,
nap up until an hour before we started this podcast. You don't have
well,
to sell
she,
me on it. I'm a believer.
and so for 6 years, this kid didn't nap, but then also would go to sleep and then wake up at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning for the whole day.
Oh no.
She just didn't sleep. And we took her to specialists and doctors and over and over, because that means I'm not sleeping.
Mm-hmm.
I do need sleep. I was exhausted, all while functioning and working and doing all the things. And the doctors was like, she's a healthy kid, just some kids don't need that much sleep. And I'm like, well, I need sleep. So Courtney said, put some oils in a diffuser and put it in her bedroom. And she absolutely, within 2 weeks, I said to my husband, said, you know what? I think she's sleeping because we're not waking up. And like from then on out, it was history. She was sleeping. Wow. Like it calmed her down enough to go to sleep. And I said, if I would have known 6 years ago, that would have helped me. I would have given you my left arm. Like,
right.
There is no amount of money that can pay for good sleep. And that for like, I will forever use real oils in a diffuser. And we all have them. I probably have 11 diffusers in our whole house. And I probably have 8 in boxes that I have on backup because I will never be without it. But that was enough for me. And so that's when I became the oil queen.
I was gonna say the oil queen.
People still call me. They're like, hey, what can I use for this? And I'm like, well, I have like so many books. I'm like, let me look at my book. I feel like I know a lot, but there's still like, I don't know everything. But
well, that's cool. I mean, it's like you're 10,000 on mugs and all the inventory. I mean, it's like a real business. What was the learning curve for you to, get on board with this?
Well, with oils, so you don't have to buy a kit to like become a member anymore. You're just, it's free to be a member. But before you had to buy a kit, the kit costs $165. So in that, you got a diffuser and you got 12 oils. So you kind of started out small and you used those oils for whatever reasons, like lavender. Lavender makes you calm, but also like if I burn my hand on my curling iron, I put that on there and it literally doesn't hurt anymore. So it was like these little ways I was using them that were like, oh, well, that's so much easier. And so then you just go, oh, well, maybe next month I'll try that oil. And oh, my husband snores, so I'm going to put some down his nose and that works. And you're just like always in awe of the magic of nature.
Mm.
Do I still use, I mean, obviously we go to the doctor. My daughter just had an ear infection and she had to take an antibiotic. Like we're not anti.
Sure, modern medicine.
Yeah, but we just, this is all Mayan. Like it's inventory of Mayan. Like,
it's your personal, this is your personal stash right here.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't actually keep any oils that I sell or any products that I sell with that. That's all, it's kind of like an Amazon where like if you wanted it, you would sign up with your own account and then whenever you want some, you just order it and then you get it.
Okay.
And it, yeah.
But well, I'm curious, just like from the actual like business, the numbers, all that, right? When you talk about, boy, you wish that school had taught you like I wish school had taught us about like running a business, starting a business, how to do those things. When you're doing $10,000 on a single mug. And you want to keep those things, you have to know what you're doing. Where did you learn all that stuff? Do you get help from, I don't want to assume you got like your husband showed you how to do it, that your husband's doing. I'm assuming, that you get that knowledge too, but you don't start with that knowledge when your path had been education and nannies.
Right. So actually Facebook is a big place that taught me a lot. I think it teaches people a lot, all the different things. Like I have a Facebook group for Young Living that's business. I have one that's specifically with that about taxes to make sure we know like what we should be doing with taxes, because while they pay us every month, they don't take taxes out. So that's all on you. But there's these professionals who are like, instructing you on what kind of tax professional you need in real life. But they help you monthly set aside of like your receipts and all that stuff that you wouldn't normally do. I feel like I already knew most of that because with the skincare and the mugs, I was already doing that. but that's also because I started on Etsy. So on Etsy, there's lots of Facebook Etsy groups. So lots of people who've been doing it for 10, 20 years, they'll chime in and say, well, here's what you need to do. And then by them saying those A, B, C, D, E, then you research it yourself to make sure, like, oh, okay, that is what I should be doing. Should I be an LLC? Should I have an EIN for my business? And it's kind of, I mean, what I do, I feel is pretty easy because I don't have a lot of inventory. I don't feel like I have to do a lot of bookkeeping. But even with making the t-shirts, there's groups that tell you, oh, what kind of machine you have, and then you go into that group, and then when you troubleshoot, they're like, oh, I can help you with that. I've had that problem. And so I feel like a lot of it, you get so much help from Facebook.
That's interesting. So you've got your own t-shirt press and all that?
Yes.
Wow. See, these are the things that, like, I've always wanted to do things like this, and I just go, how do people do it? And I go, do people just have the equipment? Like, you're all in on it. You got to be in on it. Like, I don't know. I'm always like, I don't know. Do you go online and just like design it and then give them give the website the design and then get it printed out? But you're like actually hands on making it.
There is a lot of websites who do that. They take a good
right
profit. So I started out with a machine, a printer. So you have a printer that prints the paper. It has special ink, and then you have to print it on a special mug that's coated with sublimation.
Okay.
So the first printer I bought was like $200, but then I had to like, I guess kind of like rig it to work the way it's supposed to. Like it wasn't made that way. So then it had like an outside system. And so while it wasn't ideal, it worked. And then I just saved up money to buy like the actual expensive machine.
Okay.
Which, you know, they don't last very long. So, and they're kind of expensive. So it's not awesome. But there's that. And then there's a mug press. So it's like a heat press, but specifically for mugs.
Okay.
And then I also have one that's specifically for t-shirts.
You like really learn this shit.
It is an investment. You kind of start off by just buying the cheap stuff that you can afford, and then you upgrade it when you can, and then you eventually have like quality equipment. But would I have started out being like, oh, I need to invest $5,000? Like, no.
Yeah.
I'll just be in childcare forever.
And then is it mainly through like word of mouth and your social media? Is that like or do you do advertising?
No, I don't do any advertising. I mainly do it through Facebook. I will talk about stuff on Instagram. I mainly have a big Instagram following because I'll tag bigger companies. And then when I tag them, they'll share it in their stories. And then that kind of stuff happens. But with Philly Mean Mugs, that hasn't really been very lucrative on Instagram.
Okay.
Facebook, however, it's easier to share. So if I share the shirt I personally made for you and then I tag you, all the people you know now see it. And then they can be like, hey, where did you get that shirt? And you can say, well, just ask LeeAnn. And it's word of mouth via Facebook that really happens the most. And then I have a couple small businesses that I've worked with for a long time that I'm constantly making stuff for them. I've made stuff for Pep Boys, different local companies.
Yeah, that's really cool. And, you know, it's interesting that this, like, kind of started out that you're, like, second career, I guess. Would that be second or third? I guess third career. Kind of start, like, with, like, all the Wissahickon people kind of coming to your place and, like, doing that. And then you start filling your time with other stuff. That's really interesting.
But, I mean, I do all those things, and they're kind of more of a side gig because, you know, it's more of a stay-at-home mom.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. That takes that takes enough time.
Yeah.
The kids are alive, right? The kids are still kicking, right? You know what I mean? Like.
Well, we also kind of have like an unconventional farm thing happening here. Well, we have a lot less animals at the time, but I think the most animals we had at once was 18.
In where you are now in Exeter?
Yeah.
What kind of animals?
Well, currently we have a bird. She's like upside down. We have 4 cats. We have 2 bunnies and a potbelly pig.
I was gonna say you gotta have a pig.
Yeah, but at once we have also had a hamster. We've had 2 guinea pigs. We've had another cat. We had 3 dogs. We just recently fostered a dog for my friend for 6 months. Like, we've taken a lot of rehomed animals. and elderly animals, and now that's just kind of all quieting down.
They
But
say pigs are like dogs.
they're smarter than dogs and
Okay,
cleaner than dogs. They don't
that's
shed.
all right.
They will have one time a year where it's called blowing their coat and all their hair comes out at once and then it grows all back.
Okay.
And but they learn tricks in like minutes. It's so fast.
What kind of pig tricks are you doing?
So she can sit, she can we call well it kind of looks like she curtsies. She can spin, and then we have like one of those old little Tykes pianos, and we'll tell her to play music, and she goes over and hits the keys.
Oh, that's wild.
Yeah,
That's
she'll
so
do
funny.
anything for food.
That's really funny.
The hard thing with pigs is they don't love dogs because they're a prey animal to a dog.
Okay.
So you have to like always have like we don't currently have a dog, but we have always had one. So we had to always keep our eyes on them because she'll snap at the dog, and the dog who loves everybody would be like, "Wait a second, why are you being
Mm.
mean to me?" And then it can cause, you know, a vet trip.
Yeah, yeah. Did you get any I don't have the yearbook. I'm just curious if you had any like superlatives or anything like that, being that you were captain of the cheerleader, uh, most whatever,
I
anything like
don't
that.
think so. If I don't remember. If I did, it might have been like most spirited because why not? But I don't even know if that was one of them off the top of my head.
Being that you were class of 2000, what happened with your 20-year reunion? Ours got pushed back, and we're just going
Yeah,
to have ours in October. Nothing for you guys.
nothing. Mm-mm. I
Any?
think there was, I don't know if there was a 5 year or a 10 year, but when they had it, it was at the Great American Pub in Conshohocken,
Sounds right.
which to me, I don't know why why not PJ Wellahams? Like, that's at least in one of the towns our school was with. But
Yeah.
I lived in Pittsburgh or in Texas anyway, so
Okay.
I didn't attend.
Um, are you looking forward to one eventually, or
I
like?
think it would be fun to go.
Yeah, that's kind of how
I
I
feel like
am.
there's a lot of people who are kind of like all over the place, and I don't know how many people would come to it, but I think it would be fun to go. I think it would be fun to meet people and catch up.
That's how I
I'm
feel.
sure there's probably a good amount who aren't on Facebook, who don't do
Yes.
Instagram. So then, like those people, you're just never going to reach out to. And I feel also a way about, and I'm guilty of this on Facebook. My name's LeeAnn Miller. It's not LeeAnn Malseed Miller. So if someone's searching for LeeAnn Malseed, they're not going to find me as easily. And my hair is different. So they'd probably be like, not her.
It's
That's
not
the
her.
wrong one.
It's definitely not her.
So I feel like you don't have the accessibility if everyone moves. They could like we all scattered like ants to live all over the place. Like how would we even find each other?
Yeah. Well, this will now, I think, will be the official connection to the fact that you are LeeAnn Malseed, and you have black hair now.